occupying till he comes at Southwest Prophecy Ministries. This is David Schnitger with today's Southwest Prophecy Ministries podcast. It is a great privilege to have Doc Marquis on the podcast today and next week to discuss his latest DVD entitled There Were Giants in the Earth. These two DVDs are approximately 3 hours long, and having viewed them, I can tell you absolutely these are fascinating DVDs. No one is better qualified to speak about this subject than Doc Marquis. Those of you who know Doc will, of course, remember that Doc was raised in the international occult group known as the Illuminati. During his youth, Doc was trained as an Illuminist and attained the rank of Master Witch. That is a third-level Illuminati witch. As a young serviceman, Doc, in the providence of God, had several Christians who presented him with the gospel of Jesus Christ. And by God's grace, Doc responded to the message of salvation by grace through faith. On April 15, 1979, Doc became a born-again Christian, forever severing his ties with the Illuminati. After graduating from Bible college, Doc has devoted his life to using every possible means to expose and educate the public on the secrets of the Illuminati. Doc is an accomplished author and filmmaker, having produced well over a dozen documentary films on biblical, prophetic, and occult topics. Today we deal with his latest film, which is true to fashion, unique in its content. Now, it is a special joy to have Doc with us on the podcast today, as Doc was instrumental in so many ways in launching Southwest Prophecy Ministries just a year ago. Well, Doc, welcome back to our program today.
How you doing today, David?
I'm doing great, and it's always wonderful to hear your voice, and I appreciate so much you're taking the time today to share with our listeners about your brand new film.
Oh, always my pleasure.
Well, we'll start with a basic question. You're a busy man. You have a lot of ministries to attend to. And why is it that you decided to produce these DVDs on the subject, There Were Giants in the Earth?
Well, mainly because when we look into the prophecies of the book of Revelation, in particular, Revelation 18:23b, we find out that the entire world, every single nation, is going to be handed over to the Antichrist through the occult. Now, it says all nations, not some, not just part of them. No, it says all of them. And that means we're going to see occult activity right now in a resurgence greater than all of recorded history. And that actually, believe it or not, is related to giants because of how all of it began back in Genesis chapter 6. We find out that Satan had started the very first genetic experiment by having fallen angels, a.k.a. demons, mate with female human beings and create a race, a new race, if you would, or a hybrid known as giants. And we find, if we check the cultural stories throughout history, that major cultures, just about every single one you can come up with, had stories on giants, such as, in the Greek mythos we had the Titans. With the Norwegian or the Scandinavian myths that dealt with the Norse mythology, we had what was known as the Bifrost giants, and so on and so forth. And we find that once we draw all the connections, there is a direct link between giants and the ancient occult practices of the ancient Druids that you would find throughout the British Isles.
It's an amazing thing when you think about it. We live in a day when there are many people who don't believe in the supernatural. The idea of giants is, the stuff of comic books, etc. But the Bible really has some fascinating supernatural subjects in them. And you have done such a complete, exhaustive treatment of this subject. Of course, as I mentioned at the outset, there are two DVDs under one cover packed with 3 hours of content. I was taking notes on the videos, and I have pages and pages of notes. In broad strokes, what subjects do you cover in these 2 DVDs?
Well, we basically start off with the giants. Then we get into the ancient megalithic stone circles, such as the ones you'll find in England along the Salisbury Plains, like Stonehenge, Avesbury-Henge, so on and so forth. Then, of course, there's little unknown places people just don't realize that there's also stone circles located at, such as Göbekli Tepe and Nabali Kore, which is located in the area known as ancient Persia or modern-day Iraq. And there are also stone circles you could find in Russia, Sweden, here in America, and other places throughout the world. And these stone circles are very, very important to the occult study of the giants, because it was the ancient giants that built these stone circles, so that, literally speaking, and let me backtrack a second, these stone circles serve 3 major functions. They were used as astrological observatories, center of religious worship, and, most importantly, where the rites of human sacrifice could be performed. And they were performed by the ancient Druids 8 times a year, just like you would find in the modern-day movement of the Illuminati, who claim direct descendancy to the ancient Druids. And it was the giants that built these stone circles that eventually their sires, their fathers, could be summoned through at these stone circles through various occult rituals. So in essence, you see a circle here. The sons built the circles so that their fathers, the demons, could be summoned.
Wow. I mean, that is an amazing thing. I've seen pictures of Stonehenge and some of the other stone circles in various parts of the world, as your film talks about and shows them in England and Turkey and other places. And to think of the kinds of things that took place at these ancient stone circles, I think is very startling and I think shocking to many people today who who look at them as just mere tourist attractions, very simple and innocent places, but they were anything but innocent, were they?
Anything but innocent, because underneath Stonehenge alone, archaeologists have unearthed more than 4,000 human skeletal remains, and that's a small stone circle. The one in Avesbury is more than a mile in circumference, so you can imagine how many people have been sacrificed there compared to Stonehenge.
Oh, absolutely. Well, let's back up. On DVD 1, you go into a great deal of biblical detail regarding giants. You've already mentioned where giants came from, directly from Genesis chapter 6. If you take the Bible literally, which I know you do and we do here at Southwest Prophecy Ministries, these giants were the fruit of the hybridization between female human beings and fallen angels. Can be referred to as Nephilim in places, but they are the product of these fallen angels. What was God's attitude toward these hybridized giants, both before and after the flood? Because they do occur after the flood as well.
Right. Well, they were an abomination to the Lord, because, you see, it was God who created life. He called Adam out of the clay, and he created Eve through one of the ribs of Adam. Well, as I've always stated, Satan has never had an original idea in his life. What he did was, again, as I explained to people, you want to understand the occult, think of anything in it that is either a direct reversal or a perversion of something found in the scriptures. Now, we apply that to Satan, and lo and behold, there's a pattern again, because he decided he was going to create life, if you would, but he needed to create an army, because he had recently been thrown out of heaven. And if he can't keep heaven, he was going to keep the earth. So what he did, he created an army of giants, and God was not about to allow that to happen. And let's face it, we find out in Genesis chapter 6 that the whole of the earth was corrupt. And so he regretted making his creation, mankind, and he wiped them out, except for Noah and his 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, his daughter-in-laws, and his wife. And he destroyed the earth through the great flood. Now, after that, we do see a resurgence. And the reason we see this resurgence, and I have to tell you, in all honesty, it was such a good idea to create this race of giants that Satan did it again. And we find that the numbers were, if we look at the biblical mathematics of how many cities and towns there were in a particular area, so on and so forth, and we extrapolate the math. In the ancient land of Canaan, where the children were sent in, the land flowing with milk and honey, we find out through the math that approximately 1 million giants residing in that area.
Boy, that's amazing. That's the area referred to as Canaan and the surrounding areas there in the Middle East?
Right.
Do you think that had anything to do with what God told Joshua in terms of wiping them out, these tribes?
Well, the reason God was going to wipe them out is because Satan was going to try to stop one of God's prophecies. You see, this is called a belief that if just one of God's prophecies could be undone, then God couldn't be done. God couldn't be God because, one of his prophecies could be unmade, and God is supposed to be all-powerful. Well, when we look around the middle of the ancient area known as Canaan, well, there's a little unknown area back then. It was called Bethlehem of Judea, where the coming Messiah was going to be born. And you see, that's why there was 1 million giants purposely put there. Those giants were going to be there to prevent that prophecy from being fulfilled, the coming of Jesus Christ. However, God, in his infinite foreknowledge, said that's not going to happen, and he sent in his kids and wiped them out.
So Satan was willing to go to every extreme to keep Christ from being born.
Exactly.
Wow.
Including, if you remember, when Herod had murdered every newborn child, male, 2 years or under.
Right. So we see Satan at work there. It seems like what we have then in the Old Testament and even in the New is Satan using his, how should we say, his minions to do everything possible to prevent Jesus from being born, from living, and obviously dying for the sins of the world on the cross.
Well, exactly. The 2 major reasons was first to prevent salvation. Second of all, was to prevent Satan, in his own mind, his ultimate demise, because Christ is going to be the one that will judge him and send him to the lake of fire at the end.
Well, Doc, let me play a skeptic for a moment. I used to live in the Washington, D.C. area, and I made several visits to the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History. And I never once saw any gigantic bones. I saw gigantic bones of, dinosaurs, etc. I never saw any archaeological evidence in the Smithsonian that giants ever existed. Could you share with us maybe why the Smithsonian doesn't have any of those, and what you have uncovered as archaeological evidence that giants existed in antiquity?
Well, you can actually find the physical remnants, the actual archaeological evidence of giants that had existed. We find the bones that, and we can prove this through the scriptures, the actual skeletal remains tell us that, depending on what giant you found, range anywhere from 9.5 feet to 40 feet in height. We have found their weapons, such as double-headed axes, that stood anywhere from 10 to 12 feet in height now. And just when I think of some of their weapons, what human being would make, let's say, a 12-foot tall, double-headed axe? No human being could wield it. It would take someone of a giant status to be able to pick up the weapon and wield it.
Oh, absolutely.
Now,
And you have
you
have
find
pictures of these weapons in your film.
I've got the documentation to prove these things existed. Now, you will find the hardcore physical evidence throughout the world, but the reason you won't find it here in America is because many of the so-called trucks, vans, and what have you that were delivering the bones that had been discovered in America had mysteriously vanished. They just went into the Bermuda Triangle somehow, and we haven't seen them again. And I know that the reason they're doing that is to cover up the fact that giants had once existed. I mean, let's think about this. Here in America, they push evolution like no one's business, but yet, if we could definitely demonstrate the existence of giants, through the bones, weapons, what have you, then it would prove that the scriptures were right and evolution is wrong, and that would undo everything that the Illuminati's been trying to do in America as far as, pushing secularism over spirituality. But, as I said, you can find the evidence in other places throughout the world.
And you have brought the evidence, that many photographs contained in your film of gigantic skeletons of creatures, that were, as you say, 36 to 40 feet in length, entire skeletons, femur bones, fingers. There's all kinds of evidence around the world, not, as you say, in the United States, where we're so brainwashed by evolution. At least our government is trying to brainwash us in that way. But in other countries where this evidence is not suppressed, it's really abundant, isn't it?
Yes, and if Lord willing, first week of October, we will be going out, back out into the field where I've been doing a lot of work, and we will even be bringing in back more evidence of what I've been stating when it comes to the giants here, called the stone circle, so on and so forth. Lord willing, we'll have the finances by then, because the pastor in that area who has been helping me with has told me that the activities there are going up the charts now. I mean, we're talking serious demonic activity, and it seems that there are these unidentified creatures also roaming out there that no one can identify.
Wow.
And right now, it's a choice between either these are some sort of unknown creatures or they're actual demons. We just don't know at this point until I can get out there to help them.
Well, we definitely want to revisit that subject in next week's podcast, what's going on right here in the United States. Some amazing things and some footage that you have included in our film that is just absolutely mind-blowing. Well, we're going to reluctantly have to pause for now. On our podcast next week, I can guarantee you we will be dealing with more of the contents of this 2-DVD series entitled There Were Giants in the Earth. And I'll be asking Doc next week, are there giants in the earth today? That's something he can be thinking about. Well, friends, I am sure that you will want to obtain a copy of this 2-DVD set. It's under one cover, but it is 2 DVDs. Now, in this riveting DVD series, former Illuminati witch Doc Marquis falls back on over 50 years' worth of occult knowledge and takes us back to the ancient days when giants walked upon the earth, including right here in North America. Step by step, Doc reveals that ancient giants were responsible for the creation of massive megalithic stone circles, and then shows us the direct connection between them and modern-day crop circles. Then Doc goes where no researcher has ever gone before, and that is to connect the dots to reveal demonic manifestations occurring at these sites in our present day. This is startling and powerful information you will not find elsewhere. You may obtain a copy of this 2-DVD set, nearly 3 hours long, for a gift offering of $19.95 plus $5 shipping and handling. Now, you may obtain this DVD set in 3 different ways. You may order it on our website, www.swpm.us. That's www.swpm.us. swpm.us, or you may order it through the mail at Southwest Prophecy Ministries, P.O. Box 58043, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma 73157. That address again is P.O. Box 58043, Oklahoma City 73157, or you may call us at 405-604-5975. That's 405-604-5975. Our shipping policy, my friends, is out the door in 24. In other words, we will rush you this DVD as soon as we hear from you. Please join us for next week's podcast as we continue this interview with Doc Marquis on the subject, There Were Giants on the Earth. Now, folks, let me tell you, you will not want to miss next week's podcast. Doc is going to be talking about some things contained in this film that will blow your socks off. This is David Schnitker. Thanks for listening.